Hi there, Jack McLean here, and welcome to Prepare Like a Pro live chats. Prepare Like a Pro is a business that I created earlier in the year. We're a strength and conditioning business working with male and female developing footballers all over the country. We're based in Melbourne, and we specialise in structuring athletic development programs as well as physical preparation for off-season, pre-season and in-season training. I'm going to invite Ace on, guys, tonight, sending over my invitation. There you go, Ace. Here he is. How you going, mate?
Good, mate.
Thanks for jumping on.
No worries.
I'll just go through your intro real quick and then we'll get cracking in, mate. So for those that don't know Ace, he played for the Brisbane Lions, which is in the AFL, has been involved in 8 senior premierships and 2 senior coaching premierships. He was the 4th selection, so number 57 in the national, which was in 2008, leading up to the 2006 All Australians team. Played 20 AFL games, kicked 35 goals, was delisted at the end of 2013 with Tasmania, which is his home ground, where he now is playing coach of the Glenorchy Football Club, which is in the Tasmanian State League. In 2014, against the Clarence at the Bell Reeve Oval, suffered a horrific injury, which we'll go into a little bit later on, but basically dislocated his knee and severed some blood vessels, to which he potentially could have lost his. Thankfully, he didn't. Still got the legs, still moving around strong. Coached Glenorchy, plenty of success. Coached into a grand final win in 2016 after being runners-up for the last 2 years before that. And I was lucky enough to meet Ace in 2018 when he was appointed the senior assistant coach. So he looked after the backs, and he's currently the development coach of the Box Hill Hawks. So thanks again, mate, for jumping on. We've got a few that have followed us now. So we've got an audience. Let's start back at the beginning, mate. When did you fall in love with the game, and at what age did you realise this is something that you have the talent at that you're going to pursue to be an Australian rules footballer?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Jack. Look, it's a great question, mate. I thought about this over the last 24 hours. Bit of an insight to the questions, mate. I'd have to say early days would have been being in the sheds when my man played. He played a lot of footy in Tasmania and was a very good football player in his own right. And yeah, I just got a lot of old footy jumpers that were dads, and I reckon just being around the sheds and being involved in the footy teams that he was being involved in at the time. And I think I still get a bit of a flashback from that when I smell a bit of deep heat.
Yeah.
My youth and kicking about the change room. So it started there. I played Oz kick, as most people do at that sort of stage in their life. And from there, my family moved to the road that backs onto Glenorchy Football Club home ground. So I was only a stone's throw away, and much to my old man's disapproval, I ended up playing for Glenorchy, who were black and white, and the old man played for Norfolk, red, black and white, and there was a bit of a rivalry back in the past. And yeah, so he always made me wear red undies when I played, so I had a little bit of red, white and black on, and we were St Kilda supporters, but came up through the ranks in Glenorchy. And I think the great opportunity in Tasmania that I was given many opportunities to play state league footy, represent Tasmania. I joined the under-15s program as a 14-year-old state program, which stayed in Tasmania at the time. It gave us exposure to AIS testing and then obviously the elite coaches in the state. Then from there, I played 2 years of 15s, 2 years of 16s, 2 years of 18s. Lucky enough along the way to captain. We won a couple of championships, got exposure, and sort of early as I realised if I wanted to play AFL footy, I was going to have to move to the mainland. So I directed a little bit of my life around that, learning how to cook and doing some jobs around the house, and my family were very supportive through that time. And yeah, I sort of, early days, I was very torn between basketball and football. I think I was a pretty good basketballer and represented the state as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sort of would have to say that I probably early days I loved basketball a lot more. And then I went away on an under-16s tournament to Perth, and it cost Mum $2,500. We were left to our own we were basically left on our own a bit, 16, 17 playing in this tournament. And that same month, I went away for under-16s football to Queensland.
Yeah.
And it cost Mum and Dad $250, and we had about 6 coaches and about 10 support staff, and I didn't have to strap my ankles. And yeah, I just really enjoyed that. Got along with some great guys there, made some relationships. And Tom Collier, who ended up getting drafted to Brisbane as well, played in that side.
Yeah.
There's a few AFL guys. Big Tommy Bellchambers played in that one as well. Yeah, and I sort of fell in love with it from there. I still played a lot of basketball, but I think footy at that time became my main focus, and I really wanted to be an AFL footy player.
Yeah, for sure. So you finished playing at the end of that year and fully focused on your football for your that 17, 18-year-old?
Yeah, finished. So from that, I got picked up in the under-17s All-Australian side, which we were to travel. We were supposed to travel to Ireland, but there was obviously some altercation of the other side, and we ended up going to South Africa, which was a great experience. Played in the first game of Australian rules in South Africa, where it was Australia versus South Africa. The score wasn't amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, how'd that go?
Oh, yeah, look, we had Nick Natanui, Cochin. We had all these superstars of the game now. There's a lot of guys in that side that have gone on to make fantastic AFL careers. And, yeah, we got a bit of a touch experience, but we played two waffle sides on the way over and on the way back. So, yeah, I was a part of that for a year. And then from there, missed out on the draft by, I think it was about 21 days, and then had another year back in Tassie. Played some VFL footy, so Tasmanian Devils were in the VFL at that stage. I was lucky enough to play VFL at 17, 18 years old under Darren Creswell. Got some exposure to that. Decided very late in the season, the Devils were in a bit of turmoil, and I decided to go back to Glenorchy to be a part of their final series and played in back-to-back senior flags at Glenorchy. Yeah. Again, it was a bit of at the right time, right place. We had a great coach in David Newitt and some fantastic players, and we won back-to-back flags. So I was pretty chuffed with that, and that made it 4 in a row. At that stage, I'd played 19s reserves and senior flags 4 years in a row. So I was very lucky at Glenorchy. That was a great bit of success. And
lucky your dad.
And they played in.
I was just going to say, lucky your dad. So they played, your dad moved into the right territory. Exactly
right. I got away from Norfolk and got away from there. But yeah, no, as I say, the club was great to me. I really enjoyed the time, and probably end of the day, it made a fair bit of the decision to go back in 2014 after being delisted from Brisbane. So that was a bit of a story all the way through to there. Yeah, it's home obviously, and then the club was a great support, and I'm sure that question will probably come shortly.
For sure. And so you mentioned a few names along the way. Who would be standouts in terms of mentors or people that have heavily influenced your career throughout playing days and now coaching as well?
Yeah, my family, firstly, my sister Ria, mother Galen and father David. Early days, those guys were fantastic supports. My sister's born on the 15th of December, and I probably played about 3 grand finals on the same weekend. So she had to sacrifice that. Mum and Dad had to sacrifice a lot financially and time-wise. Probably a little bit more so for basketball. There was a lot of travelling for basketball over the state, but they supported me and put me into these programs and allowed me to do that. So I'd definitely say, my family were big influences. My old man certainly used to kick the footy at me every night, work on my hands and, help out my game. And I used to dread playing a long way away from home. If we played an hour away from home, it was probably my least favourite place to play because I'd get a full match report on the way home and all the negatives that I'd done and things that I needed to work on.
There was big critique of your game. It's good he's watching.
Definitely. Biggest critique. He still critiqued me when I was coaching as well. He gave me a few pointers, but he's probably a cliche, but people do say it's he's probably my best mate and he's been a great support for me. So along the way, there's a lot of coaches. I had some really good coaches that influenced me, and I took bits and pieces. And I certainly noticed once I started to coach what I liked and didn't like from certain people, and tried to implement that into my coaching.
Yep.
And there's players, older guys. I remember Grant Birchall. He probably wouldn't know, but he was coming up. He was a couple of years above me, coming through the Tassie ranks. He looked up to these sorts of guys. Jack Rewalt again was a year above me, 2 years above me. So you looked up to those guys along the way. And again, you try to work little bits of their game into your game. And I was lucky to be in the footy community down home because there's a lot of support and there's a lot of people. And as I say, Dad had a pretty good career as well. So I was looked after in that aspect.
Yeah, it seems from afar. Anyway, my dad's living in Tassie. From what he tells me, it's a pretty strong-knit community down there. And, it seemed to be plenty of support, like you're saying. There's also been a lot of talent that's come out of Tassie. Why do you reckon that is? Is it, from your experience, is it a strong development? Is it the community support? What are some of the reasons you reckon that some good AFL footballers have come out of? And state league footballers as well.
There's probably a few things to go with. You could say there's not much else to do. But, no, look, footy's I think even though, time's moving forward, I think coming up when I was younger, the girls that I went to school with either played netball, they danced, and the boys played footy or cricket in the summer. It was basically pretty simple as that. And we spent a lot of our lunch times kicking the footy to one another and sort of mucking around and building those early skills, both sides of your body, judging space. I think, one of the reasons definitely the best part of my game was marking. It was the hours and hours of markings up that I used to play. And because I was a bit taller, the boys used to come after me, and they probably worked out in my favour to, make my hands stronger and being able to judge a pack. And we used to do it on the old netball court, which was asphalt, so didn't want to go to ground. So, worked on your balance and keep your feet. But as far as Tasmania goes, look, football's a part of the fabric down there. It's starting to change a little bit, as I said, but even going back to Coach Glenorchy, the community's involved, your family's involved, your extended family's involved, and it's just been a great opportunity, as I said before. I think I look back at under-16 state basketball in Tasmania. There was 100 guys to choose from for the 11 spots to travel. And coming over here to Victoria Metro, we heard that there was 2,000 people trying out for 11 spots. So even though, there is great talent coming out of Tasmania, the opportunity to be exposed is a lot better. There's a lot of guys that I went to school with and girls that were multi-sport, state representatives. Yeah, right. There's one girl that I went to school with. I think she was in track and field. She played state netball and there was also a state swimmer. So there was opportunity to be in that. Yeah, and unfortunately over here with the population, sometimes people slip through the cracks. I think I listened to Andrew Bogut's podcast and just the competitiveness of him trying to get into the Melbourne teams, let alone making it to the NBA or the Australian side, was really surprising. And definitely I look back at my time in Tassie and very thankful that I got to play a lot of state representative sport. Yeah,
and what were some of the highlights as a player? Like, what did you enjoy the most of your time at Brisbane?
I didn't really have that push myself. I sort of went off my own ability a lot instead of trying to really work hard and make my way into teams. When I got to Brisbane, I had to strip that back and work on my aerobic capability and get stronger in the gym. And it took me a fair while to figure that out. And by the time I did figure that out, it was a bit too late. So I don't regret any time at Brisbane. It was a great experience. I grew up. I bought a house. I got to travel. We went to China to play footy. So I played footy in China against Melbourne. Got to go to America. I've been all over the country. And we played in 4 senior premierships in the NEFL, in the Brisbane Lions reserves. Played a bunch of games in the reserves and lucky enough to get on the end of a few goals and then as well. So that was a great experience at Telstra Dome or Etihad Stadium against Carlton, sorry. That was another great experience and definitely something that I'd cherish forever.
Yeah, and I get the feeling I know where you'll go in this direction, but what would be your biggest challenge or as your playing career?
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of an easy one. There's probably 2 parts to that though, Jack. I would say the biggest challenge for me was getting to Brisbane and having them strip me right back and basically telling me that I wasn't strong enough and I couldn't run. That was sort of the first time that I'd faced that. As I said before, I'd played senior footy at 15. I played VFL at 17. I didn't really get knocked back much when I get to Brisbane and. Yeah, and I'm sure you know what it's like. When you obviously get drafted off certain parts, but to get to the AFL level, there's a lot of work to be done and foundations to be built. So it took me a couple of pre-seasons to really realise what that was. And then obviously on the flip side of that, being injured. So I just remember the very first moment that I got injured, I thought, I've done my knee and I'll be out for 12 months. I'll just rehab my knee for 12 months and I'll come back. And then after that, I thought, well, where's the football? I'll try and kick this goal and get off the ground. And, and I'm 5 years down the track, mate, and only a week ago I spent 6 days in hospital, which is still related around the leg. So, I thought I'd be rehabbing an ACL or a PCL or something like that. And here I am, mate, 5 years down the track and still, 6 years down the track and still dealing with it.
Yeah, far out. What do you have to do to be able to, because you function at quite a high level. I saw you running around, kicking when you're coaching with the boys and you've got some good mobility and then also you're carpenter. So you're using your body, but have you ever had to do a lot of work to try and get to that point?
Oh, certainly. Look, early days, I didn't really comprehend as to what was going on. Initially, I had no ability to move my foot whatsoever. I couldn't move my toes. I was lying up in a hospital bed. It was the first time I had a small procedure on my hand in Brisbane for a tendon.
Yep.
And that was it. I'd never been in hospital before. I'd never been injured. I think I missed, so I was 15 when I started playing senior footy, and then I was obviously 23 when I finished. I reckon I missed a combination of probably 10 games, if that, through injury.
Yeah. Yep.
So I had a very lucky run. I felt like I was pretty resilient, and that probably comes back to the question before about the influences. My old man had a big impact on me in that way. You played through pain, you played hurt. You didn't show anyone. You just kept playing, and in the end, resilience. And then my time in the AFL built a lot of mental resilience on not necessarily getting selected and turning up to play and trying to put your best foot forward and continuing just to work hard, even though the results might not necessarily come or weren't coming in the senior side of things. That built my resilience through injury. So early days it was quite tough, but I just was basically get on with it. Really, I thought I really felt there was a point I couldn't tell you when, but there was definitely a point after the initial injury where I thought, I can feel sorry for myself here, or I can just keep going and push through and sort of get on with things. And I sort of subconsciously reckoned that I did that. I just sort of got back to it and went back to work at the footy club and tried to get around as much as possible. Sort of said to my doctors and that early on, I just want to be able to go fishing by myself. I gave myself a small task. It wasn't, when I come to the realisation of how serious the injury was, I thought, I just really want to go fishing and be able to go fishing by myself. So, I gave myself that little challenge, and again, family was really good. My now wife, Katie, was with me at the time, and we put a bit of a timeline together on surgeries and where I wanted to be. And I came out of hospital in a wheelchair, still with the X-Fixator. You saw the photo with me with the magazine. I still had the metal poles in my leg, which was, a fair challenge. I tell this story. It's probably my favourite story. That I had to be helped to do everything. I couldn't get in and out of bed. I was laid up. Obviously, had the poles. I was laying. I could only sleep on my back. I had to use a pee bottle. I had to be helped to the bathroom. And obviously, I've got my bits out. And he raised me and changed my nappy. But I've got my bits out. I'm 23 years old. I've been living by myself in Brisbane. I don't have to tell anyone what I'm doing. All of a sudden, my old man's in there, and he puts a bit of shampoo in his hands and starts washing my hair. And I said, Dad, my arms are working, mate. My leg doesn't work. I can wash my own hair. Get out. So it was a bit of an experience for everyone. But I'm sure people that have been, I was pretty injured, so I couldn't do a heap, and I really had to strip it back. As I said, I was independent. I was doing my own thing. I was being able to drive around and, go, even just to get up and go out and get a coffee or walk to the toilet. I wasn't, unable to do that. I had to rely on people, and I had to sort of strip back my own pride and make myself very vulnerable to let people do that. The first time I went to the bathroom in hospital, I obviously went number twos, and the nurses come in to get it, and they say, look, it's fine. We've seen this before. And I felt like saying, well, actually, it's the first time that I've pooed into a bucket and had sick people come in to get it. So, that sort of stuff that you don't really realise early days. It's very confronting and a bit embarrassing, but, you've got no other option. You just sort of got to get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, transition from playing to coach, at that stage you're a player coach. How long did it take for your rehab to get to the point where you come back as coach?
I think, so I had surgeries along the way. I learned a lot.
Which is a crazy number as well. How many operations did you have? I remember the one I had the first time of that on the leg.
25 operations. Yeah. So there's been a few to get me back together. But, again, there's a people that I have to sort of commend for this. The president of the footy club, John McCann, was fantastic, looked after me really well. The board supported me, support staff around. I've noticed that as we're talking now, Sammy Yee's just joined, funnily enough, while I'm speaking about him. So, I feel like I made one of the best decisions about my coaching to appoint a fitness coach, Jack. I didn't claim that I knew everything about fitness, and I felt like I had a pretty solid game plan, and I wanted the guys to follow that through. But I think the thing that made the difference at Glenorchy with my coaching was two things. Well, I stopped playing, which, I didn't feel like they relied on me a bit forward of the footy. And the second thing is I got Sammy Yee to get the guys fit. And I think the best thing about Glenorchy at the time was we were be able to sustain the game plan for longer than anyone else. We were fit, we were fierce, we tackled really well. But I had to learn the first year that I made some mistakes. I made a fair few mistakes. And as long as you learn from those mistakes, which I believe that I did, and as you say, the transition, I knew I wanted to be a coach. I still had AFL aspirations or higher level. Funnily enough, Andy Collins is now coaching at Box Hill, but was at Williamstown, tried to recruit me there. And the only reason that I didn't go there was just the job. Glenorchy offered me the coaching side of things, which is what I really wanted to do. So that made that decision. But yeah, it was, as I say, it's the people that you get involved in footy clubs. The more I spend time around good football clubs, it's about the people that are involved, and no one necessarily knows everything. It's just people who've experienced circumstances or situations before and understand how to deal with them. The more time I spend around good coaches, it's the more I realise that they've seen everything before, and they've learnt from it. So they're able to handle certain circumstances. So players messaging you, and early days I got too involved in that, and I started to learn that I had to say certain things or deal with certain people in certain ways, and really try to empower the leadership group at Glenorchy, which they did in the end, and they ended up making the decisions. And we had a really tight-knit group, and as I say, Sammy Yee got these guys fit, and were able to sustain the game plan. And once we beat North Launceston, we were able to get the monkey off our back and get some success. Yeah,
fantastic. And then when did you transition to Box Hill? What was the change there? And What's your sort of focus in off season? This time of year as a coach, how do you make the most of this time in the year?
2017, the list was starting to change in Glenorchy, and I knew that I wanted to get back to the AFL, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So in 2017, had the conversation with my partner, Katie, at the time, and we decided that we wanted to go back to Queensland or back to the mainland. So I applied for a fair few jobs. And then Southport, I had a conversation with Southport, and they had a senior assistant role, and I jumped on it, back to Queensland where we met and where I'd spent some time. And, from there, we moved up there, which was quite interesting. So we took young Pippa and we moved up. We didn't see the house that we were going to. We got the guys at the footy club to go along and have a look, and we moved up, and it was a good thing for us.
That.
And Southport was fantastic. So I really enjoyed the NEFL. One of my favourite parts about footy is the travel, getting away and getting along with the guys. And, if you go to Darwin or Canberra or Sydney. So that was a big part of the upside for me to go there. And then, luckily enough, we got a good group of guys together again. As I say, the coach was very experienced in understanding the players and understanding the game, and we got some success, which was great. We won the first senior premiership for Southport and NEFL for a fair while.
Yep.
And then from there, I felt like I was a little bit out of touch with the AFL, and I wanted to try and get involved in the system. So I applied for a few roles, and I came down and spoke to Max Bailey, the great Max Bailey at Box Hill, and they offered me the role. And again, Katie and I, after 12 months, packed up and moved again down here to Melbourne, not seeing the house and having someone else look at it for us, and jumping in the car and moving poor Pippa, and we dragged her down. So Katie and Pippa have been an incredible support for me, and Katie's allowing me to follow my dream, which is amazing. So we came down, and I got involved in Box Hill, and I think the big appealing part was obviously the Hawthorn program and what Hawthorn's achieved in the AFL and just what they stand for. So look, it's an interesting time, Jack. You've been fantastic through this COVID time. It's unprecedented. We've never seen it before, and to keep the players engaged. And there was certainly times along the way that I thought, I'm not sure whether it's I'm older now, but I would have really struggled to stay involved knowing that there wasn't going to be any games. Sure. And our young group, did a tremendous job. They kept themselves fit, ready to go. But now it's a different, again, the environment's changing. The VFL's changing again. The age group's changing. So there's going to be some list cuts. There's going to be some shuffles. The coaching staff at Box Hill's changed again. We've got new guys on. As I mentioned, Andy Collins is coming in as senior assistant. We've got Sam Mitchell as coach, and we've got two guys coming across from Williamstown.